My dear brothers and sisters, sometimes danger does not come with fire, sometimes it does not come with noise, sometimes it comes quietly, growing slowly, smiling beautifully, right inside our homes. You look at it every day, you water it, you admire it, you feel proud of it, and yet, it may be harming you. Today, we are not talking about enemies from outside. We are talking about something inside our homes. Something that looks innocent, something that appears harmless, but slowly, silently, it destroys, and this teaches us a powerful lesson. Not everything that looks good is good for you. Not everything that looks harmless is beneficial. This is a truth we often overlook because human beings are naturally drawn to what is pleasant, comfortable, and familiar. We judge by appearance, by first impressions, by what feels easy and agreeable. Yet life repeatedly teaches us that danger does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes harm arrives quietly, wrapped in beauty, comfort, or apparent innocence. It sits with us, grows around us, and only later do we realize the damage it has caused. From a very young age, we are taught to avoid what looks dangerous. Fire burns, sharp objects cut, storms destroy, but we are rarely taught to be cautious of what looks gentle. This is why some of the greatest losses in life come not from obvious threats, but from things we trusted too easily. A habit that seemed harmless in the beginning becomes an addiction. A word spoken casually turns into a wound that never fully heals. A small compromise quietly opens the door to much larger ones. In our daily lives, we often allow things simply because they do not immediately harm us. We say, "It's not that bad," or "Everyone does it," or "It doesn't affect anyone." These phrases are dangerous because they train the heart to ignore consequences. Harm rarely begins at its peak. It starts small, subtle, and almost unnoticeable. Like a crack in a wall, it widens slowly with time until one day the structure can no longer stand. Many relationships begin this way. A person may appear kind, supportive, and harmless. Their words are sweet, their presence comforting. But over time, their influence pulls you away from your values, weakens your discipline, or drains your emotional and spiritual strength. At first, you ignore the signs because nothing seems wrong. Later, you wonder how you lost your peace. This is why wisdom is not about reacting to harm, but recognizing it before it takes root. The same principle applies to habits. Something small done occasionally seems insignificant. Skipping responsibilities, delaying important tasks, indulging in excess, speaking carelessly. None of these seem destructive at first. In fact, they often feel relieving. But slowly, consistency shapes character. What you repeat becomes who you are. A harmless looking habit can quietly shape a harmful lifestyle. Even thoughts can be deceptive. A negative thought may seem like realism. Doubt may appear as intelligence. Arrogance may disguise itself as confidence. But when such thoughts are entertained repeatedly, they harden the heart. They change how a person sees themselves, others, and even their purpose. What once felt like self-protection becomes self-sabotage. There is also a lesson in how environments affect us. A place may feel comfortable, familiar, and safe. Yet if it constantly exposes you to negativity, distraction, or temptation, it slowly erodes your growth. Comfort does not always equal goodness. Sometimes discomfort is what pushes us to become better, stronger, and more mindful. Remaining in a harmful environment simply because it feels familiar can cost a person years of progress. Human beings are also deceived by time. If something does not cause immediate harm, we assume it never will. But time reveals truths that moments cannot. Just as certain plants grow slowly but eventually break concrete, certain influences grow quietly but eventually break hearts, families, and faith. The damage is not sudden, but when it becomes visible, it is often deep. This is why self-awareness is so important. A wise person regularly evaluates what they allow into their life, not just what is clearly wrong, but what is subtly misaligned. They ask themselves, is this helping me grow? Is this bringing peace or slowly stealing it? Is this strengthening my values or weakening them? These questions protect a person from silent harm. Neglect often plays a major role in destruction. When we stop paying attention, when we stop reflecting, when we stop holding ourselves accountable, we create space for harm to grow. Many people do not fall suddenly, they drift. They drift away from discipline, away from mindfulness, away from purpose. And drifting feels harmless until you realize how far you've gone. Another deception lies in popularity. When something is widely accepted, it feels safe. When everyone is doing it, it feels normal. But truth is not measured by numbers. History is full of examples where what was common was also harmful. Following the crowd without reflection often leads to regret. Just because something is normalized does not mean it is beneficial. There is also the emotional side of deception. Some things feel good but are not good. Pleasure is not always a sign of benefit. Relief is not always healing. Escape is not always rest. Sometimes what feels good in the moment steals something valuable in the long term. Discipline, on the other hand, may feel uncomfortable at first, but it protects and builds. A person who understands this begins to value long-term peace over short-term comfort. They learn to say no to things that look harmless but carry hidden costs. They learn that not every opportunity is a blessing, not every door needs to be opened, and not every invitation needs to be accepted. Wisdom also teaches us to look beyond ourselves. What seems harmless to you may harm those around you. A careless word, a neglected responsibility, a tolerated behavior can affect children, families, and communities. Harm spreads quietly, just like benefit does. This is why personal accountability matters so deeply. In life, the greatest protection comes from awareness, reflection, and restraint. The ability to pause and think before allowing something into your space, your heart, or your routine is a powerful skill. It saves time, energy, relationships, and peace. Not everything that looks harmless is beneficial. Some things smile before they hurt. Some things grow before they break. Some things whisper before they destroy. The wise person does not wait for collapse to take action. They recognize the signs early, make small corrections, and protect what has been entrusted to them. In the end, success is not just about avoiding obvious danger. It is about guarding yourself against silent harm. It is about understanding that real wisdom lies in seeing beyond appearances, choosing what truly benefits you, and having the courage to let go of what does not, even when it looks harmless. Creeping and invasive roots are a powerful reminder of how damage often begins silently, out of sight, and beneath the surface. When we look at a plant from above, all we usually see are green leaves, beauty, and growth. What we rarely think about is what is happening underneath the soil. Roots do not ask permission. They do not announce their direction. They simply grow, searching for water, space, and survival. And in that quiet process, they can lift pavements, crack walls, block drains, and weaken foundations. Most people do not notice invasive roots until the damage becomes visible. A small crack appears in a wall, tiles begin to lift, doors stop closing properly. By the time the problem is recognized, the roots have already spread far and wide. Removing them becomes difficult, expensive, and sometimes impossible without serious repair. This is how hidden problems work in many areas of life. When something grows unchecked and unseen, it gains strength while we remain unaware. Invasive roots thrive in neglect. When there is moisture, softness, and no resistance, they expand rapidly. They exploit weaknesses in structures, no matter how small those weaknesses are. A tiny crack in concrete is enough for a root to enter. Once inside, it expands, forcing the crack to widen. Over time, what began as a hairline fracture becomes a serious structural issue. This teaches us that weaknesses, if ignored, will not stay small. They invite further damage. What makes creeping roots particularly dangerous is their patience. They do not rush. They grow steadily, day by day. There is no sudden collapse, no immediate alarm. Everything seems fine on the surface. Life goes on as usual, while beneath it all, pressure is building. This is why people often underestimate slow, moving harm. They assume that if nothing bad has happened yet, nothing will. But slow harm often cuts deeper than sudden disasters. The environment plays a major role in how roots behave. When water sources are close, roots are drawn toward them. Pipes, drains, and foundations become targets because they offer moisture and space. Once roots find these sources, they wrap around them, squeeze them, and eventually damage them. In the same way, harmful influences are drawn to areas of weakness in our lives. Wherever there is emotional vulnerability, lack of discipline, or absence of boundaries, negative forces find an entry point. Another dangerous aspect of invasive roots is how interconnected they become. One root leads to another, spreading outward in multiple directions. Even if you cut one part, others may continue to grow. This makes removal difficult. You cannot simply trim what is visible and assume the problem is solved. The source must be addressed. Similarly, in life, addressing surface-level symptoms without dealing with root causes rarely brings lasting change. True repair requires digging deep. Creeping roots also affect surrounding structures. They do not harm only the area they occupy. They shift soil, redirect water, and destabilize nearby foundations. One tree planted too close to a home can damage not only that house but also neighboring properties. This reflects how unchecked behavior can impact more than just the individual. When problems grow silently, they often affect families, communities, and future generations. Many people develop a false sense of security because damage takes time to appear. They see the plant growing and assume it is harmless because nothing has gone wrong yet. But roots do not need attention to grow, they need resistance to stop. Without barriers, guidance, and regular inspection, they expand freely. This is why prevention is always easier than repair. Once roots have invaded deep structures, solutions become complex and costly. There is also an emotional lesson in how invasive roots operate. They attach themselves firmly, making separation painful. Removing them can damage what they are attached to. In some cases, homeowners delay removal because they fear the damage that removal might cause. This delay only allows the roots to grow stronger. In life, letting go of harmful attachments can feel painful, but delaying the decision often leads to greater loss. Creeping roots are especially dangerous because they disguise their strength. Above ground, the plant may appear small or decorative. Below ground, its root system may be vast and aggressive. This contrast between appearance and reality is what makes invasive growth so deceptive. We trust what we see, not what we cannot. But what we cannot see often has the greatest impact. Time plays a crucial role in this process. The longer roots are allowed to grow, the deeper they embed themselves. Over months and years, they adapt to obstacles, finding new paths around barriers. This persistence makes them resilient and difficult to eliminate. Harmful patterns in life behave the same way. The longer they exist, the more they adapt, justify themselves, and resist change. Ignoring early signs is one of the biggest mistakes people make. Small cracks, minor blockages, or subtle changes are often dismissed. People tell themselves it's nothing serious, but these early signs are warnings. They are opportunities to act before damage becomes severe. Those who pay attention early save themselves from future hardship. Creeping and invasive roots also remind us that not all growth is good growth. Society often celebrates growth without questioning its direction or impact, but unchecked growth can destroy the very structure that supports it. Healthy growth respects boundaries, harmful growth ignores them. Understanding this principle encourages responsibility. Where you plant something matters, how you maintain it matters, what you allow to grow near your foundation matters. In life, what you allow close to your values, your time, and your heart matters deeply. Ultimately, invasive roots teach us that silence does not mean safety. Just because something is quiet does not mean it is harmless. Just because damage is hidden does not mean it is not happening. Awareness, regular inspection, and timely action are essential. Creeping and invasive roots do not destroy overnight. They destroy patiently. They remind us that the greatest threats are often the ones we fail to see, the ones we tolerate because they seem small, and the ones we allow to grow because they look harmless. Every experience in life carries a spiritual lesson, even those that appear ordinary or unrelated to faith. The spiritual lesson often lies beneath the surface, waiting for a reflective heart to uncover it. When we slow down and observe carefully, we begin to see that life constantly teaches us about ourselves, our choices, and our relationship with our Creator. Nothing happens without meaning, and nothing is placed before us without wisdom, even if that wisdom is not immediately clear. One of the deepest spiritual lessons is the understanding that appearances can be deceiving. What looks small may carry great consequences, and what looks beneficial may hide harm. This teaches the believer to rely not only on what the eyes see, but on insight, patience, and guidance. A spiritually aware person does not rush to judgment. They pause, reflect, and seek clarity before allowing something into their life. This inner caution is a form of wisdom that protects the heart. Life teaches us that neglect is not neutral. When we neglect our spiritual responsibilities, we do not remain the same, we decline. The heart, much like land, must be tended. If it is left unattended, weeds grow naturally. Neglecting prayer, reflection, and self-accountability slowly hardens the heart. The damage is gradual, almost unnoticeable at first, but over time it becomes heavy. This is why consistency, even in small acts of goodness, holds immense value. It prevents spiritual decay. Another powerful lesson is that boundaries are a mercy. Just as physical structures need limits to remain strong, the soul needs boundaries to stay pure. When a person removes boundaries in the name of freedom, they often invite harm. Discipline is not a restriction, it is protection. The spiritually aware person understands that not everything permissible is beneficial in every circumstance. Wisdom lies in choosing what elevates the soul, not merely what satisfies desire. Patience is another lesson woven into every challenge. Growth rarely happens instantly. Strength develops through endurance. Faith matures through trials. A person who understands this does not despair when things take time. They recognize that the process itself shapes them. Hardship is not always punishment. Sometimes it is preparation. When patience is exercised, the heart becomes resilient and trust deepens. Life also teaches us the importance of accountability. Every action leaves a mark on the soul. Words spoken carelessly, intentions left unchecked, and choices made without reflection accumulate over time. The spiritual lesson here is that self-accountability must come before external accountability. A person who regularly examines their heart, corrects their intentions, and seeks forgiveness remains spiritually alive. Those who ignore their inner state often realize their loss only when it is deeply rooted. Another lesson is that influence is powerful. Humans are shaped by what they repeatedly expose themselves to. Conversations, environments, habits, and relationships all leave spiritual impressions. Even if something seems harmless, repeated exposure can slowly shape the heart. This teaches the importance of choosing environments that nurture faith rather than weaken it. Protection of the heart is a form of worship. Gratitude is also a profound spiritual lesson. Many blessings are recognized only after they are damaged or lost. Health, peace, time, and faith are often taken for granted until they are threatened. A grateful heart remains aware of blessings while they are present. Gratitude strengthens faith because it connects the heart to the giver, not just the gift. It creates humility and contentment, which protect against arrogance and dissatisfaction. The spiritual lesson of responsibility is central to human existence. We are caretakers of what has been entrusted to us: our bodies, families, time, wealth, and faith. Neglecting these trusts leads to imbalance. Responsibility requires effort, awareness, and sacrifice. A spiritually conscious person does not wait for damage to occur before taking action. They understand that prevention is easier than repair, both materially and spiritually. Another lesson lies in the nature of repentance. Just as damage can occur slowly, healing can also begin quietly. Turning back does not always involve dramatic change. Sometimes it starts with a sincere intention, a small correction, or a renewed commitment. The door of mercy remains open, and this realization gives hope. Spiritual growth is not about perfection, but about constant return. Life also teaches us that arrogance blinds the heart. When a person assumes they are safe, strong, or immune, they stop guarding themselves. This false sense of security often precedes spiritual decline. Humility keeps a person alert. It reminds them that guidance is a gift, not an achievement. The spiritually aware remain cautious of their own weaknesses and constantly seek divine help. Another lesson is the danger of delay. Postponing spiritual growth, repentance, or self-improvement creates room for harm to settle. Delay often disguises itself as comfort. The heart becomes accustomed to distance, and returning becomes harder. The lesson is to act when awareness arrives. Moments of clarity are gifts, and ignoring them carries consequences. The spiritual journey also teaches balance. Extremes often lead to burnout or neglect. Sustainable faith is built on moderation, consistency, and sincerity. When a person understands this, they stop comparing their journey to others and focus on steady growth. Balance protects the heart from both arrogance and despair. Ultimately, the spiritual lesson in everything is awareness. Awareness of one's intentions, actions, surroundings, and direction. A person who lives with awareness does not drift aimlessly. They understand that life is temporary and every moment is meaningful. This awareness transforms ordinary experiences into reminders, challenges into lessons, and setbacks into opportunities for growth. The one who reflects benefits from every situation. Even mistakes become teachers. Even loss becomes guidance. This is the beauty of spiritual awareness. It turns life itself into a source of wisdom, shaping the heart toward humility, discipline, and a deeper connection with purpose. Negligence starts small, so small that it often goes unnoticed. It rarely announces itself as carelessness or irresponsibility. Instead, it appears as delay, distraction, or a simple decision to deal with something later. A task postponed, a warning ignored, a responsibility taken lightly. At first, nothing seems wrong. Life continues as usual, and because no immediate harm appears, the mind convinces itself that the choice was harmless. This is how negligence finds its entry point. In the beginning, negligence feels comfortable. It saves effort. It avoids discomfort. It allows a person to choose ease over discipline. One missed obligation does not collapse a system. One ignored sign does not destroy a structure, and this is precisely why negligence is so dangerous. It teaches the mind that consequences are optional, that accountability can be delayed without cost. Over time, this mindset becomes a habit. Small neglect accumulates quietly. What is ignored today becomes normal tomorrow. A person who once felt uneasy about delay eventually stops noticing it. The heart adapts, just as the body adapts to poor posture or unhealthy routines. The damage does not disappear, it simply becomes hidden, and hidden damage often grows deeper because it is not addressed. Negligence thrives on familiarity. When something is repeatedly overlooked, it blends into daily life. People begin to accept broken systems, strained relationships, and declining standards as normal. They say, "This is just how things are," forgetting that it was not always this way. The transition from care to carelessness is gradual, and that gradualness makes it difficult to reverse. One of the most dangerous aspects of negligence is that it weakens sensitivity. The first time a person neglects something important, there is often guilt or discomfort. But if the neglect continues, that discomfort fades. The conscience grows quiet. What once felt wrong begins to feel neutral. This numbing effect allows greater negligence to take root without resistance. Negligence also affects priorities. When small responsibilities are ignored, larger ones begin to feel overwhelming. The mind becomes accustomed to avoidance rather than engagement. Tasks pile up, problems grow, and instead of addressing them, the person feels paralyzed. What began as a small delay becomes a source of stress, anxiety, and regret. In relationships, negligence often shows itself through silence, not checking in, not listening carefully, not addressing small misunderstandings. These may seem insignificant, but relationships are built on consistent care. When attention fades, distance grows. People rarely drift apart suddenly. They drift apart through small acts of neglect repeated over time. In personal growth, negligence appears as inconsistency. A person sets goals but does not follow through. They promise change but delay action. They know what to do, yet fail to do it. Over time, this creates a gap between intention and reality. Confidence erodes because the person no longer trusts themselves to act on their own decisions. Negligence also affects the inner world. Ignoring self-reflection leads to a lack of self-awareness. Emotions remain unprocessed. Mistakes remain unexamined. The heart carries unresolved weight, and without reflection, it becomes heavy. People often feel restless or dissatisfied without understanding why. The reason is not always hardship. Sometimes it is accumulated neglect of the inner self. Another dangerous aspect of negligence is its ability to spread. One area of neglect often leads to another. Ignoring health affects energy. Low energy affects productivity. Poor productivity affects confidence. Reduced confidence affects relationships. What started as a small neglect in one area quietly influences many others. Negligence rarely stays contained. Time magnifies the effects of neglect. The longer something is ignored, the more effort it takes to fix. Early correction requires minimal energy. Late correction requires sacrifice, resources, and sometimes irreversible loss. This is why prevention is always easier than repair. Yet negligence convinces people that there will always be time later. Negligence also creates false hope. People believe they will eventually catch up, fix it later, or start fresh tomorrow. While hope can be positive, false hope delays action. Tomorrow becomes a convenient excuse that never arrives. Meanwhile, the cost continues to grow. Another subtle danger of negligence is that it shifts responsibility outward. When problems become serious, people blame circumstances, others, or bad luck. They forget the small choices that led there. Negligence rarely feels dramatic enough to remember, but its consequences often are. This disconnect makes accountability difficult. Negligence starts small, but it does not remain small. It feeds on inattention, comfort, and delay. It grows quietly, shaping habits, weakening discipline, and eroding structure. By the time its effects are visible, it has already established deep roots. Awareness is the first defense against negligence. Paying attention to small details, responding to early signs, and maintaining consistency protect against gradual decline. Care is not about perfection, it is about presence. It is about noticing, addressing, and valuing what has been entrusted to you. Every strong system, whether a home, a relationship, or a character, is built and preserved through attention to small things. Neglecting the small eventually destroys the large. This is why vigilance in minor matters is not trivial. It is essential. The home is a trust, an Amanah, placed in our care for a limited time. It is not merely a structure of walls and a roof, but a space where lives are shaped, values are learned, and hearts find rest. Many people see a home as something they own, something they control completely, but in reality it is something entrusted to them. This understanding changes how a person treats their home, how they behave inside it, and how seriously they take their responsibilities within it. An Amanah is something given to you that does not truly belong to you. It comes with responsibility, accountability, and consequences. When the home is viewed through this lens, negligence is no longer a small matter. Carelessness is no longer excusable. Every action inside the home carries weight because it affects not only the physical space but the people and values nurtured within it. A home can become a place of peace or a place of harm, depending on how its trust is honored. The home shelters the body, but it also shapes the soul. The words spoken inside it echo in the hearts of children. The behavior displayed within it becomes normal to those who grow up there. If anger is common, anger becomes familiar. If kindness is practiced, kindness becomes natural. This is why the home as an Amanah demands conscious effort. One cannot separate personal conduct from household impact. What you allow in your home, emotionally and spiritually, becomes part of its atmosphere. Neglecting the home does not always look dramatic. It often begins quietly, maintenance is delayed, issues are ignored, communication weakens, respect fades, small problems are brushed aside with the hope that they will resolve themselves. But an amanah does not disappear when ignored, it deteriorates. The longer responsibility is delayed, the heavier it becomes. Eventually, the cost of neglect far exceeds the effort that early care would have required. The trust of the home also includes safety. Providing a secure environment is not limited to locking doors. It includes emotional safety, where family members feel heard, respected, and protected. A house where fear, humiliation, or constant tension exists may look intact from the outside, but inside it is damaged. Emotional neglect is often more destructive than physical neglect because its scars are carried for years. Children, especially, experience the home as their first world. It shapes how they see themselves and others. When the home is treated as an amanah, parents become mindful of the example they set. Discipline is balanced with compassion. Authority is exercised with justice. Love is expressed consistently. When this trust is neglected, children may grow up feeling insecure, unseen, or burdened by unresolved issues they did not create. The home as a trust also extends to cleanliness and order. A neglected environment affects mental clarity and emotional well-being. Disorder breeds stress, laziness, and frustration. Maintaining the home is not about perfection, but about care. It reflects respect for the blessing provided. When a person maintains their home with intention, it reinforces gratitude and responsibility within the household. Another aspect of this trust is how conflicts are handled inside the home. Disagreements are natural, but how they are managed determines whether the amanah is protected or violated. Constant shouting, unresolved resentment, and silent hostility poison the environment. A home cannot remain a place of peace if conflicts are allowed to fester. Responsibility demands effort in communication, patience, and forgiveness. The trust of the home also involves what is allowed to enter it. Influences, habits, and behaviors do not stop at the door. What is watched, discussed, and normalized inside the home shapes its moral and spiritual climate. Allowing harmful influences simply because they are common or convenient is a form of neglect. Protecting the home sometimes requires saying no, even when it is uncomfortable. Time is another element of this amanah. A home cannot thrive on presence without engagement. Being physically present but emotionally absent weakens relationships. Shared time builds connection, understanding, and trust. When time is consistently sacrificed for distractions, the home slowly loses its warmth. The trust is not fulfilled through provision alone, but through attention and care. The home is also a trust in terms of resources. Wastefulness, misuse, or disregard for what has been provided reflects a lack of accountability. Gratitude is shown through responsible use. When resources are respected, contentment grows. When they are taken for granted, dissatisfaction follows. A mindful household teaches moderation and appreciation. Another overlooked aspect of this trust is repair. Every home, like every relationship, experiences damage. What matters is the response. Ignoring cracks, whether physical or emotional, allows them to spread. Taking responsibility means addressing issues early, seeking help when needed, and being willing to change. Pride often prevents repair, but humility preserves the amanah. The home is also a place of rest. When it becomes a source of constant stress, something is wrong. A home should allow its members to recharge, reflect, and find peace. This does not happen automatically. It requires intention. Noise, chaos, and unresolved tension rob the home of its purpose. Protecting peace is part of honoring the trust. Even when people move from one home to another, the concept of amanah remains. Wherever you live, however temporary, you are responsible for how that space is treated. This mindset creates respect, care, and awareness. It prevents entitlement and encourages stewardship. Ultimately, understanding the home as a trust transforms daily actions into meaningful responsibility. It reminds a person that they are accountable not only for what they build, but for what they allow to grow within those walls. Words, habits, attitudes, and priorities all leave their mark. When the home is treated as an Amanah, it becomes more than a shelter. It becomes a place where peace is protected, values are nurtured, and responsibility is lived, not spoken. Awareness leads to prevention, and this principle governs nearly every area of life. When a person is aware, they are no longer moving blindly. They see, they reflect, and they respond with intention. Prevention does not begin at the moment of crisis. It begins long before, at the stage of awareness. Many problems become disasters not because they were unstoppable, but because they were unnoticed or ignored when they were still small. A lack of awareness creates vulnerability. When people are unaware, they assume safety. They move comfortably, trusting that nothing will go wrong. This false sense of security is often the beginning of loss. Awareness, on the other hand, creates alertness. It trains the mind to observe patterns, recognize early signs, and question what others might overlook. The aware person does not wait for damage to become obvious before taking action. In everyday life, awareness shapes behavior. A person who is aware of their time values it. A person who is aware of their words chooses them carefully. A person who is aware of their actions understands consequences. This awareness naturally leads to prevention because it interrupts harm before it grows. When someone notices early warning signs, they can adjust their direction without suffering major loss. Many forms of destruction begin with distraction. People become busy, overwhelmed, or complacent. In that state, awareness fades. Small issues are dismissed, minor cracks are ignored, and subtle changes go unnoticed. Over time, these neglected details accumulate. Prevention fails not because solutions were unavailable, but because attention was absent. Awareness restores attention, and attention restores control. Awareness also brings responsibility. Once a person becomes aware of something, they can no longer claim ignorance. Awareness demands response. It pushes a person to act, to protect, to correct, or to improve. This is why some people unconsciously avoid awareness. It requires effort and discipline, but the cost of avoiding awareness is always greater in the long run. In personal habits, awareness is transformative. When someone becomes aware of how a habit affects their health, productivity, or peace of mind, change becomes possible. Without awareness, habits run on autopilot. They shape life quietly, often in harmful ways. Awareness interrupts this cycle. It creates a pause between impulse and action. That pause is where prevention lies. Emotional awareness is equally important. Many conflicts escalate because emotions go unrecognized. A person who is aware of their anger, frustration, or insecurity can address it before it turns into harmful words or actions. Without awareness, emotions control behavior. With awareness, behavior becomes intentional. This prevents broken relationships, regretful decisions, and unnecessary pain. Awareness also protects values. When people are unaware of what influences them, they absorb ideas, attitudes, and behaviors without realizing it. Media, environment, and social circles shape thinking subtly. Awareness allows a person to question what they are consuming mentally and emotionally. It enables them to filter influences rather than absorb everything blindly. This filtering is a powerful form of prevention. In families and homes, awareness plays a crucial role. Parents who are aware notice changes in behavior, mood, or habits. These early observations allow guidance, support, and correction before problems deepen. Homes suffer not always because of major events, but because small issues were overlooked repeatedly. Awareness preserves harmony by addressing issues early. Financial problems often follow the same pattern. Lack of awareness about spending, saving, or priorities leads to gradual instability. People rarely collapse financially overnight. It happens through small, repeated decisions made without awareness. Those who track, reflect, and stay conscious of their financial habits prevent future stress and loss. Awareness also strengthens discipline. When a person understands why something matters, they are more likely to protect it. Prevention becomes meaningful when awareness connects actions to outcomes. A person who is aware of long-term consequences will naturally resist short-term temptations. This awareness builds inner strength. There is also a deeper layer to awareness, self-awareness. Knowing one's weaknesses, triggers, and limitations is a powerful form of protection. A person who knows where they are vulnerable does not place themselves unnecessarily in risky situations. This is not weakness, it is wisdom. Prevention begins with knowing oneself honestly. Awareness teaches patience. When someone is aware, they do not rush into decisions. They observe, gather information, and reflect. This reduces mistakes and regret. Many losses occur because of haste combined with lack of awareness. Slowing down is often an act of prevention. In the broader sense, awareness creates gratitude. When people are aware of what they have, they take care of it. Neglect often comes from taking things for granted. Awareness reminds a person of value, and value inspires protection. What is valued is guarded. What is guarded is preserved. Awareness also reduces fear. Fear often comes from the unknown. When people are unaware, they imagine worst-case scenarios or remain unprepared. Awareness replaces fear with preparedness. It does not eliminate challenges, but it equips a person to face them calmly. Ultimately, awareness is not about paranoia or constant worry. It is about conscious living. It is about being present, attentive, and intentional. Aware people do not live in constant anxiety. They live in readiness. They understand that prevention is not an act of fear, but an act of wisdom. When awareness becomes a habit, prevention becomes natural, problems are addressed early, damage is minimized, growth is protected, peace is maintained. Awareness does not guarantee a life without challenges, but it ensures that challenges do not catch a person completely unprepared. It transforms reaction into foresight and regret into responsibility in the end. This entire reminder brings us back to one simple but powerful truth: what we ignore today can shape our tomorrow. The things that appear small, harmless, or insignificant often carry the greatest consequences when left unchecked. Whether it is something physical within our homes or something subtle within our hearts, damage rarely begins loudly. It begins quietly, patiently, and invisibly. Our homes are not just places where we sleep and eat. They are spaces of safety, growth, and responsibility. They are trusts placed in our hands, just as our time, faith, relationships, and actions are trusts. When we neglect them, we do not lose them all at once. We lose them slowly. A small crack becomes a broken wall. A small habit becomes a harmful pattern. A small delay becomes a lifetime of regret. This is why awareness is such a blessing. Awareness opens our eyes before collapse happens. It teaches us to look beneath the surface, to question what we allow into our space, and to take responsibility before damage spreads seeps deep. Prevention is not fear, it is wisdom. It is choosing to act early, correct gently, and protect what has been entrusted to us. Life continuously offers signs, warnings, and lessons. The wise are not those who never face problems, but those who recognize them early and respond with responsibility. When we understand that negligence starts small, that unseen roots can destroy foundations, and that every trust requires care, we begin to live more consciously. May we be people who do not wait for destruction to teach us lessons. May we be people who reflect, act, and protect before harm takes hold. And may we honor every trust given to us by maintaining it with awareness, responsibility, and gratitude.